Hi everyone, it's Jazz here. I wanted to go over some frequently asked questions when it comes to language learning. From my experience as well as from other people, these are some common questions that come up, and I just want to kind of lay them all out for you. So these are the top 10 questions. I'll try to get through them as quickly as I can. But just to kind of give you a sense of my experience and my perspective as a language learner. So the first question I get is, are you fluent in all of them? That is absolutely false. I more or less with the first 5, I use more than anything else. The other 5, they're kind of like, they're there because I'm just curious about them more than anything else. And then I kind of learn them for various different reasons. So it depends on which ones I use the most. Like French, I teach that the most. Spanish, I lived in LA for like 5 years. So that language was more prominent for me to use. I was living in Germany. I had an Italian friend who I still am connected with, but more than anything else, it was just, based on how often I use it. So it really depends. And sometimes with fluency, it can fluctuate. So, and also I really don't think that there's such thing as being fluent when language changes, and also you can't learn all of a language. Like there's dialects, there's accents, people speak differently depending, like it's really difficult to kind of become fluent. You can be proficient enough to not have to use English or whatever your native language is, but I would say fluent is kind of like it's kind of like a term I don't really use very often. I wouldn't say I'm fluent. 2, how do you manage all the languages in your head? That is a very good question because sometimes I really can't. Sometimes I'm thinking I was thinking in English, and I write down something in a completely different language. So it kind of is more of trying to mentally switch gears, especially if I'm speaking to someone. I'm like, all right, now I have to mentally prepare myself. We're going into Spanish now, and kind of making those particular transitions. I sometimes I maintain them on different times. It's based on like when I feel like working on them. Like sometimes I'm in the mood to watch like a Dutch video. There's a really great YouTube channel where it's called Dutchies to Be, where she basically teaches Dutch in Dutch. And for me, I'm like, cool, I'm into that. So it really depends on how I feel, like what I feel. My devices are still in French, so I still understand it. I feel like it's more of a passive form of language usage. I actually switch my languages. I'm going to Mexico. It's sometime soon, later this year. So I'm kind of in Spanish mode. But overall, I just kind of, I would say I manage it based on when I feel like when I have a need for that particular language, and then making the mental switch. How are you able to learn these languages even at once? So I'm going to go by that quote from Ratatouille: anyone can cook, but I honestly think anyone can learn a language. It really depends on how motivated you are, what your reason or your purpose for learning that language is. And it really also depends on the resources that you're using. So for me, it's mostly like I love resources that teach the language in the language with a lot of visual aspects that I really, really like. And so, like I said, I talk a lot about my different techniques, just being able to, try to get connected to different people. Especially like I said, I was living in Los Angeles, so of course Spanish was so easy to find people to speak with. And then also with other people I met, it's an international city. People are coming from everywhere. So I met a lot of different people that I could practice with. I think it's just more about just finding resources that help you, and then just finding ways to apply it to your life, like personal notes that I write to myself, like to-do lists, like diary entries or something like that, or just finding ways to basically use it in your everyday life. And I also teach it, which is basically one of the best forms of learning because you can basically show what you know. So I honestly think anyone can learn a language. It just really depends on what resources you're using and how you are actively pursuing opportunities to use it. So the next one is, how do you find all the people to speak with? This is a question I got from a lot of friends, because I would always talk about, oh, I found this friend and we're doing this and I met this one person, and they're like, how do you find all these people? And I'm like, part of it is actually apps. Bumble BFF. I really love that one, but that's actually how I found my friend from Clermont-Ferrand. And we kind of were comparing our experiences as an au pair, and her experiences in the United States and my experience in French, and we got to speak and be more, develop more confidence in our speaking skills. And especially, like, people are very intrigued when they're like, I don't know what it is, but it's like, you're American and you speak it. Do you have friends, family? Like, do you have some sort of origin that... I'm like, no, I just speak it because I like it. Like, is that a problem? I'm like, no, but, I find these people, I actively find people. When I hear people speaking the language, I usually will try to connect with them as much as I possibly can. Like, people at my church back in Los Angeles, I remember someone who was from the Congo. And so I was like, oh, you speak French. So when I knew that it was from a different city in France. And so speaking with her, I knew someone who's from Cameroon, and so trying to speak to each other. And so you just find those people and you just make it known, I'm speaking this language, and trying to connect with, don't be like, oh, I speak French, let's speak French. That's kind of a little too direct, but it's just more of just trying to get to know a person, but you're using the language skill to do so. And sometimes people really appreciate that. I mean, especially French people, because one of the things I notice from my experience is that they don't really like speaking foreign languages. I mean, unless they have to. It's like, sometimes they're like, oh, I want to practice my English. But other times it's like, I really don't feel like speaking, like, I really prefer to speak my native language. And so in a foreign country, if they can find someone who can speak that language for them, that's something they really like. Okay, what inspired you to learn all those languages? That is a really long story for this video, but I will just say I get that a lot, because each of them are kind of inspired by different people that I met. Like, French was the one foreign language I was like, I'm just going to learn it. I didn't know anyone who spoke French. I just said, I just like this language. It sounds cool, and I'm just going to learn it. And later on, I learned that my birthday is a French national holiday. And, I met so many different friends, and I realized that more I learned about the culture, the more I realized that their culture kind of identifies with my personality. And that, like I said, it's really important to avoid stereotypes, but like when you're looking at cultural aspects of things that people do, the quality of life, it kind of clicks with you. And so with having met different people, of course, I lived in LA, so I had to use Spanish. German, I have no idea why I learned it. I think I just learned it because someone told me it was difficult, and I just wanted to understand how people can understand it. And then 4 years after that, I lived in Germany. That was something I never thought. I learned all these languages out of curiosity because I wanted to know, how are these languages written? How do people understand it? I want to understand the structure of it. Like Catalan, I don't use it at all. I just kind of learned it because I just wanted to have an aspect of, if I ever, and it kind of more like in the back of my mind, if I ever end up in Catalonia in eastern Spain, at least I will be able to understand when signs are not in Spanish, when they're in Catalan. Especially, which is sometimes kind of difficult, when you have countries where there's many, little secondary languages in that country. There's the official language of Spanish, but then you've got, like, I think it's Galician, then you've got, like, the Basque area, then you've got Catalan, I think there's one other one. So it's just kind of like, I want to be prepared. Do you think it's easier for young people to learn a language than adults? I believe I have a video on that. But basically, I don't think that young people are better at learning languages than anyone else, than adults. I just think they learn differently because they're learning off of just blindly following what the patterns that people are, the speech patterns of other people around them. Adults, you have a language to kind of be grounded in, so it's easy to make connections. So when I teach adults, which I primarily do between the ages of 18 to like 45, is that it's easier for me to explain things to them than it is to for children. So like when I'm helping people with their homework, or I think the youngest I've ever taught was like a 9-year-old. And even though she was really smart for her age, it's like the other thing is you have to be more engaging with them as well. So it's just that they kind of have different needs in regards to how they can learn a language. One is learning it more of just kind of like their environment. The others are learning it more of, they may have specific reasons for it. And it makes it easier for me to kind of give more context and make comparisons to English, more or less, than I can with kids. So I think that's a myth. I think it's just that we learn differently. Okay, what kinds of students are you teaching? So kind of going back to that, that's like between the 18 to 45 range. I primarily teach adults because a lot of times they are learning the language for a partner. They're learning it for a job they want to take abroad. They're kind of learning it for, all kinds of different reasons. They have this very specific topics. They come with homework. They come with things they want to learn. Adult is more of like, this is what I'm learning it for. Teach me the language. They don't have really a specific aspect they're trying to learn. So I kind of have to do more of a consultation with adults where I have to ask more questions than anything else. So the next one is, what are your recommendations for someone that is learning a language? I mostly use Duolingo. So Duolingo, I would say, is very common, and I will say that I normally do not recommend Duolingo. Usually, like long term, I think it's a great like starter to kind of get you in, like kind of like your feet wet with the language. I just wouldn't say it's a long-term goal to use that. My recommendation is always just like exposure. So as much as you may want to take like there's YouTube channels that teach the language, but I would say if you can kind of do that, but then also being able to like find different shows or podcasts, you just want to be exposed to it to where your brain is just like it gets used to hearing it. Right now I'm playing a game on my phone. It's called June's Journey. It's kind of like a murder mystery kind of thing, but it's like a hidden object. And because my phone was originally, it was in Italian, I kind of had to switch it to Spanish because I'm going to Mexico this year. And so, when I look at my app, all of the items are in Italian. So I'm literally I'm like, I have no idea what this word is. And then I'll like use up all my hints trying to find out what these words are, and eventually got to the point where I just see the word and I just find it. So you kind of just are exposed to it. It's like, I have no idea what this is, and then when you find the object, you know what it looks like. Oh, this is a ball, palla. Like, oh, okay, I get it. So you kind of make those connections. So just kind of doing what you normally do, just trying to find ways to, creative ways to be able to incorporate that language learning aspect. Does anyone in your family speak any of the languages that you know? So the thing is, I grew up in a monolingual household. I had to create this environment for myself. Primarily, I know my aunt in Georgia, she actually does speak French. I think she learned it in school as well. And since I don't really see her very often, we don't really use it as much. And then with my grandfather on my dad's side of the family, we kind of bond over the fact that, so my grandfather was actually stationed in Germany. So we kind of bond over the fact that he learned German, and then I also learned German. So we kind of talk about those cultural aspects. So what's your goal in learning all these languages? I don't have really a clear goal. It's just mainly just to connect with other people. I learn them because I meet other people and they have these language skills, because that's where they're from. And I sometimes just want to be a better friend, or I just want to be able to communicate, or I want to travel. And I usually don't like traveling to countries where I don't know the language. I don't know, maybe I might pick up more. I have no idea. I hope this is helpful. If any of these questions might be things that you are curious about. And let me know in the comments if there's anything else, any questions you may have for me about language learning. And I'd love to answer them as well. All right, thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys have a good one.